What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I've got for you a special EntitledParents episode. 3 stories, all pretty different. The first one involves the most potentially psychotic mother, and I know I say this sometimes, guys, I know I do, but genuinely, that I've ever come across on Reddit. Like, what she does in this story is just, it's unfathomable. It's just so, like, ridiculously disgusting. I couldn't quite believe it. So yeah, you're not going to want to miss that. The second story just basically involves a really strange grandma that doesn't want anything to do with her granddaughter until she's old enough that she thinks she might gain something from her. And the third story is another update in a story that I've covered over the past couple of weeks or so. So as you can see on screen, 2 episodes so far. The title of this one, if you haven't been around on the channel, is My Parents Disowned Me After I Went to Prison, Then Contacted Me 15 Years Later. That was the original. We've then had an update, which I posted just a couple of days ago. And there is a little update as well, which I'll cover at the end of this episode. So if you want to know what's going on in that story, stay tuned for story 3. Without further ado, sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Let's get into these stories. She called me a killer. Now she's out. This story is truly cruel. The closest person to me in the whole world is my grandmother. She was the one who saved me when my mother was abusing me. When my mother threw me out between the ages of 13 and 16, I knew I could take a taxi in the middle of the night and go to my grandma's. She would come downstairs at any hour, pay the fare, and take me in for the night. When I wanted to hurt myself, I either went to my grandma's or I called her. And this grandma, astonishingly, is my mother's mother. And she is painfully aware that her daughter is a monster, not a human being. She knows exactly how much harm my mother has caused me. A few years ago, my grandma had like a full collapse. She was barely breathing and her heart was barely responding. She was rushed to the hospital completely unconscious. My mother was screaming in hysterics. I cried my eyes out every night. The doctors gave her no chance. After 3 months of unconsciousness, they asked us, the family, to consider taking her off life support, to let her go. By then, I hadn't spoken to my mother in years. But in that situation, of course, we started talking again. One day, my mother called me, crying and begging for advice. What should we do? Should we keep grandma on the machines, or should we let her go? The hospital didn't want to keep her much longer. They wanted to transfer her to hospice. She occasionally breathed on her own, but the question was, if her condition crashed again, should we intubate her again? If she stopped breathing? I love my grandma 100 times more than my mother. She meant the world to me. But I also knew she would never want to just exist, as she used to say, like a vegetable. She was a strong, amazing woman who always wanted to stay independent. So I told my mother, she's still alive now. She's still breathing. Let's hold on to that. But if she were to go to hospice, I don't think we should prolong her life by force. And at that moment, my mother's tone changed. Ha! Got you! I knew it! I knew you always wanted to off her! I recorded this! Ha! You idiot! You totally fell for it, you stupid female dog. Now the entire inheritance will go to me. Oh my gosh. I hung up. 2 days later, my grandma regained consciousness. It took her almost 6 months to fully recover her strength and mobility, but she did it. She's been doing well ever since. It's been 6 years now, and she's fine. My mother has visited her many times, playing that recording over and over again. She keeps repeating, "That beloved granddaughter of yours wanted to off you." But grandma always replies, "Oh, F off. I wouldn't want to spend the rest of my life on a ventilator either. She was right." Then, after some time, my grandma wrote an updated will. One that can't be challenged. One that completely disinherits my mother, and it's signed by several lawyers and psychologists. My grandma is doing well. I love her more than anyone in the world. And my mother, who would have inherited something by legal succession if she acted like a human being, will now get nothing. F you. Wow. I mean, look, I said it in the intro, guys, but do you not agree with me? This has to be the most psychotic mum that we've seen. That is genuinely crazy. Like, that's so mad. I can't actually believe that your grandma is so amazing. You seem like a pretty normal person, nice girl, and your mum's just like that. How is that possible? It's actually insane, but hey, you need to get away from that woman as quickly as possible. She sounds off her rocker. Also, like, shout out to your grandma for recovering from that and still knocking about now, 6 years later. That's insane. Sorry, let me just reread this. Was she like unconscious pretty much for 3 months and made it through? Elite stuff. You know, I feel like if your mum was unconscious, she'd probably just be like, oh, you know what, I'm not going to fight, can't be arsed, I'm a terrible person, and just die. Bit of a weird thing to say, but the point being, I admire the bravery and courage of your grandma, and I think that is maybe what pulled her through. Anyway, let's move on to our second story. Okay, now moving on to our second story, which I think probably shows how grandmas can be either amazing, like in that first story, or less amazing, like perhaps we're about to see here. My grandma is surprised that I don't want her attention after ignoring me for most of my life. To give you a little context on the kind of relationship me and my grandmother had, for 20 years she spelled my name wrong. Every card that was sent had my name spelled wrong. On my 21st birthday, she sent me a card that actually had my name spelled correctly. And I, along with my mother, were so shocked that we were wondering if she'd actually sent the card. Growing up, my grandma was really close to one of my cousins, Mike. I just assumed it was because she and Mike lived close, while I only got to see my grandma on holidays or family vacations, so like once or twice a year. So the moment that made things click for me was when I was around 12 and we were taking a family vacation. We decided to go to a museum specifically for a Native American exhibit, as my grandma says we are Native American, even though there's literally no evidence of that. But once we got to the gift shop, my grandmother had bought herself and Mike matching necklaces. I remember feeling very bad and left out, so I asked her if I could get something to match with her as well, and to summarize what she said, oh, well, it's just the thing with Mike and I. We just really bond over our Native American heritage. You don't know much about it, so it wouldn't make sense to buy you something. It was at that moment in my head, I was like, oh, so you're just never going to acknowledge me and my feelings then. From then on, I never went out of my way to vie for her attention. Cut to several years later, I'm an adult and my grandmother is 79. My aunt had planned an all-girls cruise for our family. The entire time, my grandma kept wanting to join me for things and kept asking me about my plans. I found it all very weird because she showed literally no interest in my life prior, and she was shocked when I didn't want to do anything with her one-on-one. I talked to my mum about this and she was like, yeah, that's her. Her love goes to the highest bidder. I think now that she's really old, she's worried about the lack of connections she's made with family and doesn't want to die alone. I kind of felt indifferent about the whole thing, sort of like it sucks to suck mentality, which I do feel guilty about because she's my grandma, but relationships are a two-way street, and my grandmother made no effort and seemed to go out of her way to make me feel bad. I'm not going to ignore her, but I'm not going out of my way to placate her because she now suddenly feels guilty. Especially if that guilt comes from a place of self-interest, which it definitely does. I'm saying that from the outside looking in. Now, OP has added a nice little edit at the end of this, which I need to read. I just wanted to add some positivity to this mess. I've been building a relationship with my grandmother from my dad's side. The only reason we weren't close is because my parents divorced when I was a baby and my grandmother lived on the other side of the country. So it was hard for us to communicate and see one another. Now, I talk to her on the regular and she's super supportive and sweet. She always ends her messages with, quotes, I love you, and remember, you can always call your grandmother if you need anything. And it's very clear she doesn't have favourites. She loves all of us grandbabies equally, even the ones not related by blood. Well, there we go. Yeah, good stuff. What a lovely woman. Now, I'm happy to say that my grandmother, well, one of them anyway, both of them are still knocking about. Fair play to them. May well be watching and listening to this episode. If you are, hiya. It's me, your grandson. Point being, she's very supportive. She's a lovely woman. And I probably should see her more often. I read stories like this and I think, should be there. But yeah, she is definitely not the sort of woman that is going to do this, I don't think. And she's over the age of 79 now anyway, so that's very unlikely. But yeah, I don't know. I've been very fortunate with my family and grandparents in general. They're all pretty nice. They've all done pretty well. I think I'm very lucky. So I've never had to deal with anything like this, but I can imagine, like, when you have family like this, it's just so challenging. You guys let me know in the comments down below. Relationships with your grandparents, what are they like? Have they tried to use you at all? Or maybe it's the other way around. Let me know. Now, as I mentioned, the third story in this one is an update to that 15-year sort of disowning and then coming back into their live story from a couple of days ago. If you haven't seen that one yet, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, then I've left links to part 1 and part 2 in the description. Actually, I'll just leave part 1 because you need to start from the beginning there. Then there's an update in part 2, and then we have this story. So yeah, I'm not going to give too much context here, apart from the title, which I'll read in just a second. But yeah, if you don't know what's going on, links down below. Okay, so let's get into this update then. My family disowned me 15 years ago, complete no contact. Now, all at once, they want back in my life and they're stalking me. I finally confronted them. So firstly, to answer a common question, am I going to seek out my siblings and their families? The answer is no, and that answer is set in stone. And the reason is relatively simple, at least to me. My siblings are 2 and 4 years younger than I am. So when everything happened, they were old enough to understand and know what was happening. I waited for a year and a half before I changed my last name and all my contact information. They could have easily reached out to me, stood up to our parents and come to my defense, but they didn't. So now all this time later, I just don't feel the need to contact them or reconnect. To be completely honest, they're complete and total strangers and I really don't see much of a reason to reconnect. People have been asking me if I'm okay and the answer is yes. I'm feeling a lot better. This got too much in my head, but I realized I was way overthinking this. Nothing really changes. I've not heard from any of them. My best friend took me to his lawyer and I gave him everything and told him everything. He said that since reputation and family name are so important, that a simple cease and desist letter should just do the job. That he was sure my family wouldn't want their reputation and story splashed across the local news. I also feel like because of my cousin, I in general feel better about things as well. Heck hath no fury like my cousin Jean annoyed. The other day she called and said that we need to take a day and go and do something. Get out of town and just forget about everything. I agreed with no thought to it. We always have a great time when we do an outing. So I got to her place and immediately went up to her kitchen for coffee to figure out what we were going to do. I got to the kitchen and she had a bunch of papers scattered out doing a bunch of research. I asked what she was working on. Her response, "Your parents annoyed me. All I want to do is go over to their house and beat the heck out of both of them." She took a drink of her coffee. Let's talk names again. She started to research our lineage and realized some things. She told me that if there was still anything left of our last name, businesses and family money, she was almost 100% certain that I would be the sole heir to anything left if there was anything. I asked how this was possible. Surely, if anything, it would be her husband's remaining siblings and children from those survivors. But she said it was because of my grandmother that she was one of the originals, for a lack of better words. I was born under the last name, and even though my parents changed it later, I changed it back. She said it could be considered along the lines of succession. My grandmother was an original. All I could do was just kind of laugh. It's so funny how vested Jean is in this. I made the comment, look, it all sounds good and it would be nice, but if her one sister-in-law had anything to say about it, she and her family would have taken it all by now. They already got the farm. Jean ended it with, "I would have helped you get what was rightfully yours." I don't think she's completely accurate, but it's a fun thought. I laugh at how involved she is in this. I think it makes me that much more grateful to have her in my life. After that, we took off for the rest of the day and went shopping, had lunch, went and had manis and pedis done, and had dinner. But I'm good. I think we're good. I truly don't think I'll hear anything from my family. I think once they get the letter, it will all be done and over. Okay, so there we go. Pretty good update, to be honest. I think that's probably the end of things. Once again, slightly confusing. Not quite sure what is going on with the surname stuff, but it's not really important, is it? The good thing is Jean is just like a legend. I'm not entirely sure if what she's saying is legit or not. Kind of think it's probably not, but the fact that she's saying it in the first place and cares that much is amazing. And yeah, as you said, it's so good for you to have someone like Jean in your corner helping you out through all of this. You could argue that's worth more than any potential inheritance. Giving you that feeling of being supported and that calmness, knowing you're not doing this on your own, is obviously massive. So yeah, good update. I think that is probably the end of that story. And that is the end of this episode. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you didn't know what was going on in that last post and you're still not sure, then I'll leave both part 1 up here and part 2 down here to that. So you can go and click it. I would strongly advise that you start with part 1. That's a really good introduction into this story and you get a lot of context. If you're new to the channel, subscribe by clicking this button down here. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow for an Entitled Parents movie.